to your context, right? Mm-hmm. Add to your context.
Okay, recording.
Yeah, and you don't want to give it to me. I don't know.
He doesn't know how to
Okay, recording.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so on page 30 Dalet, we are in Ois Mem Aleph. We're in the middle of that, Ois Mem Aleph, and the line begins with the word riboy, riboy ho'ir. And what we came into in this section here is that we have a major question where we were saying that Chochmah is essentially above Binah in an essential manner, which means that Chochmah connects what's called the Etzem, whereas Binah connects only to the Seichel. And then in this section we point out that this is not entirely correct, because Chochmah is also Sichli, Idea Sichlis. As we explained yesterday, that there is a Seichel element in Chochmah itself. True, this is what's called the lower Madregas in Chochmah, starting from that Madrega where it becomes accessible, it becomes known to the Seichel. It's called Nekudas HaChochmah, Nekudas HaSkola. Nekudas HaSkola, this is where the Chochmah is already come through to the Chochmah Gluya, not the Chochmah as it is processed within the Nefesh itself. Nonetheless, at that point it is a Nin Sichli. And if at this point it is a Nin Sichli, therefore we have the question, it seems that Chochmah in essence is similar to Binah, except it has also madrigas that are higher than Binah. But in general, Chochmah can relate to Binah, because it comes down to the point where it becomes a Sichli. I believe that, despite the fact that we discussed it yesterday, we should bring back the points here so that we know what we talk about when saying about Sichli. Thank you. We introduced the entire discussion over here about Chochmah a few days ago. Pointing out that there is, in the creation in general, there is the worldly element and there's the godly element. The worldly element is how this inyan fits into a worldly context. Everything in the world is a composite. Like we always go to the table. The table is not an essential presence. It's put together from a board and four legs, and then it has a certain function, and it's called a table. Whereas in the nefesh itself, a table is an entity. The entire design is a true entity in itself. Chochmah relates to that true entity. This is what Chochmah relates to. Binah, on the other hand, it takes it apart into its structural level. The structural level, this is Sichli. Seichel is what makes sense of things.
With structural, the Sichli is already worldly, is that the part?
Right.
Okay.
So we have now pointed out that Chochmah also ultimately goes down to the sichli level. At the level, at the point where it becomes nekudas ha'askola. Anything that's consciously known is known within what's called mokim zman. It takes up space and it takes up time. Anything that taking up space and taking up time is a sichli, is not an essential truth. It is a worldly truth. Chochmah becomes known at this low level. Therefore, Chochmah also has a sichli, a worldly level of awareness. And thus, we're asking, if it's true, since it is true that Chochmah goes down to that point, and at this level, it is similar to Binah. If at this level it is similar to Binah, we have to therefore to reflect back and say, if Chochmah can come down to the point where it's similar to Binah, how does that reflect on the essential element of Chochmah? If Chochmah, in essence, is completely above Metzius, and it is entirely godly, so then how can it come down at this point where it becomes known in Seichel? It has to be that in essence Chochmah relates to this in. Let me again put this in perspective. You should understand. I'm going to go off a little bit and come back. I hope I don't lose you. We point out all the time that a human being walks through the world and he encounters all kinds of different things in the world. Things that are very different from one another. We have a river, we have an ocean, we have a lake, we have mountains, we have all kinds of animals, all kinds of trees. As a human being encounters all of these things, he does not question, so, am I still in the same world? He doesn't put him off balance completely at all. Yes, indeed, the world accommodates all of these things. How is that? How is that a person can reorient himself under any circumstance? And the answer, of course, is because in the Seichel, the Chochmah of Nefesh is much broader and deeper than what meets the eye. How is that? Because in this Chochmah, he recognizes that all of this is a godly creation. There's no limit to what a godly spark can accommodate. And this is why a person can go from one end of the world to the other end of the world and encounter totally opposite and totally different phenomenon, and he can relate to it and accommodate and ultimately acquiesce with it and become accustomed to it, so to speak. We have this, I'd like we should understand this, we have this phenomenon in language. There is what's called the innate language a person is born with. Huh?
Person is born with.
Born with. The person is raised with a language. This becomes his natural language.
Native.
Huh?
Native language.
Native language. Then he goes and he learns other languages. It is conceivable, it is not conceivable, it happens all the time. A person learns another language and he practices that language, he actually lives with the language and becomes also second nature. Totally different language. And languages can differ not only in the words, but in their grammar, their structure. Totally different languages.
I will go even further.
Excuse me? Yeah.
I will go even further. A language refers to other mental structure, other intellect, and it generates a different type of intellect, I would say.
Okay. There's a linguist here. So how is it that he can relate to all kinds of different structures of language and feel perfectly comfortable with it? This is attesting to the depth of our neshama, of our intellect. That in that intellect, the principle of language, the principle of the human being is a medaber. Speech is way beyond that which he's able to express on the surface level. This is why I always point out, it's important that we understand, a robot speaks and a human being speaks. It sounds very similar. Totally different worlds. Not only because of the content of the speech, that it means different to the person than the robot, but the speech itself is different. A human being is called a medaber. Why is he called a medaber? He is chochmah and he is a maskim. Why is medaber? Because this dibur represents an essential truth of the human being. So when he speaks one language or another language, he understands the depth and the true significance of that language. This is correct, and this language, this is correct, and this language, he understands the very nuances of the language. And he can relate to multiple nuances, multiple languages. Why? Because in the essence of his medaber quality, everything is included. Everything is included. Because medaber quality is an essential godly level quality of communication. It's not limited to one form or another. And every form fits in there.
By this mashal you have koach medaber and all the languages that follow. By the nimshal we have chochmah and then structure binah that follows. You might say they're more unrelated.
Go ahead.
Because seemingly they're completely different operating systems, and chochmah deals with the opposite of structure.
Wait a second. If chochmah can relate to binah, it has to have a source in the chochmah. Otherwise, it would feel uncomfortable, out of place.
Binah, both would be uncomfortable. The fact that they relate is the proof that they have.
Okay, but binah is bottled chochmah. Binah is a recipient, but chochmah actually feeds into binah.
Sort of willingly, and sees that as a proper continuation and a proper iteration.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is what's called nekudas haskola. I'd like you to understand the terminology of nekudas haskola. Nekudas haskola is not a haskola that has been created by experimentation. Nekudas haskola is a spark that comes from the nefesh, and it represents the fact that that spark is rooted in the essence of the chochmah. That's how the spark comes.
And yet it's within. And therefore what? Yet it's within binah. It's within.
That nekuda. That nekuda. It feeds into binah, and that nekuda is a spark. What's a spark? You're going. It's okay. It will come. What is a spark? You take a rock. There's no fire in the rock. You can soak it in the water, and you don't change it. Then you take another rock and hit it. All of a sudden, a spark comes out. A spark is something that is contained within the essential present, the essence. It is not something that is present as a spark in this rock. The rock has that reality that if you hit it, a spark will come out. Nekudas Haskalah is called the Borg HaMavrik. Borg HaMavrik is like a spark, which means it comes from the essence of Chochmah. Which tells us that even though this is essence of Chochmah, in the essence of Chochmah there is a spark of knowledge, of Cheichel. This is the Rebbe's question.
Isn't the question, why would the spark be useful to Binah? I mean, I'm kind
Because that's what Binah gets, that's all Binah knows. Binah doesn't know anything else.
But Binah is all about sequence and structure. A spark is outside.
No, one second. Let's answer. This is not Binah. You're referring to the secular method of deciphering things.
When we start out with worldly and
that's garbage.
we didn't mean that's limited.
No, we don't mean based on worldly experimentation. No, that's not seichel.
So we did say at the outset here that there are two elements. One is a godly element, the other is the worldly. The worldly has to do with composite. That implies structure.
But everything comes from the godly.
Okay.
If it is created from the worldly, it has no significance whatsoever.
So
it has no staying power at all.
So we're talking about something that is structured, but it's originating from a godly input. And how something that is a spark could become a structure.
There's no problem. It is a spark. Once it's a spark, it has a presence. I said it has space and time.
Really? I thought part of what a spark indicates is exactly that it's outside space and time. It's such a...
It comes from something outside the space and time.
Oh.
But now it came out, that's what we say, Borg HaMavrik, it came into space and time. It's known. It's known.
Are we saying that spark becomes a presence in Binah?
No. The spark allows Binah to focus in, what did I now experience? What did I see? Then Binah is able to, has the quality of being bottled to and deciphering it. What did I see? And therefore our question is, how do we then say? Let's start, let's say inside the words, in Rebbe's words. The line begins with Hametzi is Delakus. It's mamish in the middle of that section. Im kein das hare mishtava ha-chochmah la-bina. Therefore it comes out that the Chochmah is equal to Binah in what respect? Be'etzem mahusa, and the essential mahusa, the essential truth of Chochmah. True that Chochmah reaches up higher, but it also contains that. If it contains that in essence, it relates to it. As we explained the marshal of the language and all that. Umischalekes, and it distinguishes Rad bivchinas riboy hoyer, only in the element of riboy hoyer, that Chochmah has more oyer than Binah. The meaning of riboy hoyer, since we learned so much, let's delve into that briefly. Riboy hoyer, a lot of oyer. What does that refer to? Oyer is the impact of the etzem. Since etzem is something that is very difficult for us to identify, so the oyer is also equally difficult. But we have spoken about sufficiently so that we have already enough oases to relate to it. To use a very simple motion. A human being in his home. A home, as we say, is a true presence. Odom Shinabayis Any Odom. The home represents the human truth. The home represents the truth of the human being. And there's as we discussed, a fundamental difference, a profound difference between when the human being is present in the home or is absent of the home. When he's absent, there is also the impact that this is a human home. If you come into a home and the owner is not there, you will still treat it with deference, as if there's a human home. You will have a certain dignity. When he is present, of course, it has a completely different effect. The difference is riboy and miyutoir. When he is present, you have the full impact of his presence. That's riboy. When he is absent, there's a miyutoir. Nonetheless, there is an element of oir. And this is what he's saying, that the whole difference in Chochmah and Binah is that Chochmah is riboy. Chochmah is close to the source, and therefore the impact of the etzem is phenomenal. Like we said, a spark is, when you hit the etzem, you have a spark. Hitting the etzem, you have to be up there to hit it. This is not just a play on words. The spark comes, the Borg HaMavrik comes in a state of enormous concentration, of labor, of mental labor, when a person focuses in and forgets about everything except for that point which he's focusing to. And then that spark comes from the essence of his Chochmah. It's an amazing thing. We all experience it yeah. And the difference, so now after discussing this, the Rebbe says the whole difference between Chochmah and Binah is riboy. Chochmah has riboy.
Can I ask something?
Yes, sir.
Is this spark, but the spark on a rock is when you hit the rock. It's the same thing
Can hear.
with the spark on a rock. Yeah, the spark on a rock is you hit the rock.
Well, you have to repeat again. I couldn't hear it.
You get the spark of the rock.
Yeah.
You hit the rock. It's the same thing in Chochmah as the Borg HaMavrik. Your focus is like hitting the rock.
Borg HaMavrik comes when you focus into the essence of your Chochmah. If you stay, so to speak, on the superficial and mitzias level, it's not going to have a Borg HaMavrik. In our moshel of a spark, when you hit a rock, why can the spark come in by looking at the rock? It's the resistance, the essential resistance of the rock against that smite, against that hit, that the spark comes out. You have to go to the essence of the solidity of this rock. That's when the spark comes out. In Chochmah, it's a very similar union, because Chochmah has the essence of that principle. When you hit it hard, it comes out, it reveals itself. Hitting hard simply means Being stubbornly insistent, no, I have to get to know this. This is the labor aspect. Yigia. Okay, much more to explain. That's everybody, I'm sure, is aware of this. So therefore, the question is, there is not a fundamental difference in the Mehus HaChochmah. Be'etzem Mehus is similar to Binah. The difference is only riboy. And we already explained what the meaning for riboy is. Binah, behold, Pi poshut yesh leimar. In a simple approach to resolving this dilemma, yesh leimar, we could say, shezeh bechinas miyud ha'oel bechinas chochmah guf. That this inyan, that Chochmah comes down to the point when it becomes knowable, like a spark. It's only a spark, but it's still knowable. It still has space and time, and thus Binah can delve into it. So we're saying that it has this inyan miyud ha'oel. In that respect, it seems to be similar to Binah. But we're saying, but we have established already before that Chochmah is in a different category, categorically different than Binah. There's no similarity between Chochmah and Binah. So how is it that Chochmah comes down to this level? So a poshut, in a simple approach, yesh leima, we could say, shezeh bechinas miyud ha'oel bechinas Chochmah guf. That this miyud ha'oel is within Chochmah reality itself. In other words, this miyud ha'oel. What is the Rebbe saying? Please, let's focus into the words. This miyud ha'oel does not represent Chochmah coming outside of itself onto a worldly reality. Chochmah is not worldly, Chochmah is godly. Therefore, it's miyud ha'oel b'bchinas Chochmah gufa. It's a miyud ha'oel within the Chochmah itself. And that explains on what basis will we say this. Again, we have to understand the meaning of the words api poshut. Api poshut means on a superficial glance. This is what we may contrive, we may think to explain. But in Chochmah itself, there is an element, there's a process that's miyud ha'oel. And if it is within Chochmah itself, which means it does not come outside into the world. It is within Chochmah itself there is an element of miyud ha'oel. We'll discuss it a little more later. The Harei, since that, in order that Binah should come forth from the Chochmah, there must be a reduction of oil within the Chochmah itself. As we explained before. Because as long as there's riboy oil, Binah has no place to be. Let's understand this. As we said before, you come into a home and you see this is a human home. Although it's very obvious, nonetheless there is what's called a seichelic process. What is it? Oh, it's a home. When does that process take place? In the absence of the owner, of the host. That allows for this process. But the host is sitting there, that process has no place. Because it's riboy. It's a full statement. The essential, you see the essence itself. There's no process, no Binah. So if he's midoy, Commission's boy Binah. And V'hainu, and that would explain the fact, Masha Madrei is atachtein is the Chochmah. Hey, bibchinas sichli, idea sichli. This would explain the fact that we say that the law Madrigas of Chochmah are bibchinas, idea sichlis. They are within the realm of idea sichlis, of a seichelic knowledge. Chochmah in essence is above idea sichlis. But Madrigas of Chochmah are bibchinas idea sichlis. Shezeh bibchinas midhoir, which is the union of midhoir. You're less aware, you're less conscious of the source of the Chochmah, and the Chochmah begins to take shape within a worldly, within a Metzias realm. Madrigas hoel yenes, where the upper high madrigas hoel amaylam is also. The upper madrigas of Chochmah are above Seichel altogether. And Madrigas al-Tachtein is in between Seichel al-Soga. The lower Madrigas are between Seichel al-Soga. What's the lower Madrigas? This is Miudoir. And that becomes the source for being. So what have we just now said? That there is, we can conceive the principle within Chochmah itself, riboy and miutoir. How will we translate this riboy and miutoir in our moshel? In other words, we are not outside of the Chochmah, we're within the Chochmah itself. So what does miutoir and riboy mean? Within the Chochmah, within the reality of Chochmah itself. In our moshel, this would mean, we said like this, that Chochmah perceives the human, the owner, the host to be there. That's riboy. Within that state of the host being there, there's a difference whether the host notices you or he doesn't notice you. If you come in and the host looks at it in a different direction, he's there, but it's still in you from miudoir. Whereas if you are actually confronted by him and you're meeting him face to face, this is riboy. This is all within the Chochmah essence itself. Because in fact, as we said, if the host is there, you don't have to figure out where you are. It is there. Nonetheless, there's a difference whether you are actually communicating with him or not communicating with him. So this is what a miutoir within Chochmah itself. And that allows for Binah. Again, in our moshel, if you come into the home and the host is there, but he's turned the other way, you have to figure out how do I call the attention that he would recognize my presence, even though he is present. This is already a Binah level. If we should accept this concept, that the whole difference is between Chochmah itself, miyut oyer and riboy oyer, then that would mean that there is not a categorical difference between Chochmah and Binah. There's a difference, but not a categorical difference. So we'll just go into the next phase of this. However, in truth, it is impossible to say this. It seems to be a very smooth and positive explanation, but it does not allow. It's not acceptable. Why? Sheharei ein ze miyut levad. Since that, this is not miyut levad. This is not merely a reduction of oir. From Chochmah, from the level of Chochmah, should come to the point of hasoga, of a seichel, is not just a lessening of oir. It's a kiyim, but rather shinui be'atzem hamahus. It's a fundamental change, difference. And the explanation for this, and the emphasis, that which substantiates this statement, the fundamental difference is the following: the riyah, the hasoga, because sight and a comprehension, they're distinguishable on an essential level. Sight and